The mango tree at the edge of the village once upon a time. In a peaceful village nestled between rolling hills and singing rivers, there lived an old couple known to everyone as Big Uma and Big Baba. Their real names had been forgotten by many, but their kindness was remembered by all. They lived in a small clay house with a thatched roof, surrounded by sunflowers and wild herbs. Behind their home stood an ancient mango tree, tall and wide, with branches that stretched toward the sky like welcoming arms. It had been planted by Big Baba himself when he was just a boy. Every evening, the village children would gather around the mango tree where Big Uma would sit on her woven mat, her silver hair tied in a neat bun, her voice soft but full of stories. Once, the moon came down to the earth just to taste the mangoes of this very tree. She would say, her eyes twinkling with magic. Big Baba would chuckle nearby, shelling peanuts or fixing a broken stool with his careful hands, and it got stuck in the branches for a whole night. He would add with a wink, "That's why full moons shine so yellow." Their stories were more than just entertainment. They were lessons. Big Ama taught the children about patience through tales of the slow turtle who always found his way home. Big Baba told stories of strength and kindness, reminding the boys that being brave didn't mean being cruel. As the years passed, the village changed. Roads were paved, houses grew taller, and machines took over the fields. But Big Uma and Big Baba remained the same, steady like the roots of their mango tree. One year, a great drought came. The sun burned hot and merciless, and the villagers worried about their crops. The river shrank, and even the trees began to lose their leaves. But the mango tree behind Big Uma and Big Baba's home remained green. "How?" asked the villagers. Big Uma smiled. "We give back to the earth every day. We feed it with water, song, and love." And Big Baba nodded, and the tree remembers, just like people do. When Big Uma grew too weak to walk, the children came and sat around her instead. They brought her flowers, and in return, she gave them her last and best stories about hope, about family, about love that lives longer than age. When Big Baba passed away in his sleep one quiet morning, the mango tree dropped its sweetest fruit. The villagers all came to sit under its shade. They cried, but they also smiled, because Big Baba's laughter still lived in the leaves. Years later, whenever a child needed advice, or someone felt lonely, they would come to the tree. It had become more than wood and fruit. It was memory, it was love, and sometimes, when the wind blew just right, you could still hear Big Uma's voice in the rustling leaves. Be kind, be patient, and always share your mangoes, the seeds they left behind years past since Big Uma and Big Baba returned to the earth. Their bodies now part of the soil beneath the great mango tree, but their stories had only just begun to grow. A young girl named Amina, one of the children who had once sat wide-eyed at Big Uma's feet, was now a grown woman. She had become the village teacher, and she often told her students, "I learned to read from Big Baba's stories and learned to dream from Big Uma's voice." One morning, as Amina swept the classroom, a small boy ran in, holding something tightly in his hands. He opened his fists to reveal a tiny mango seed. "I found it near the tree," he said. "Do you think it's from Big Baba's mango?" Amina knelt beside him, her eyes soft. "Yes," she whispered, "and it's waiting for someone to plant it." So they dug a hole near the edge of the schoolyard and placed the seed gently into the soil. They watered it, sang to it, and told it stories just as Big Omar had taught them. Seasons changed. Rain fell, sunlight warmed the ground. Slowly the seed became a sapling. The sapling became a small tree, and that tree, it began to grow mangoes, golden and sweet, just like the ones from Big Omar and Big Baba's garden. It became a new gathering place. Children would come to the little tree after school and share stories of their own. Some about the village, some about school. Some even made up tales of moon fairies and talking birds, and they called it Baba tree. One day, a stranger came to the village, a journalist from the city who was writing about places that had preserved their traditions. He watched the children under the tree, laughing, sharing stories. He asked Amina, why do they sit there every day? Why not go home to watch television or play games? Amina smiled, the same way Big Omar used to smile. They're not just sitting, she said. They are remembering. They are planting seeds in each other's hearts, seeds of kindness, patience, imagination, and love. The journalist was moved. He took photos, wrote an article, and called the village the place where stories never die. People from nearby towns began to visit. They came not to see buildings or shops, but to sit under the trees, eat mangoes, and hear stories told by children who had inherited the wisdom of Big Omar and Big Baba. Even elders from faraway villages came and sat quietly, letting the children remind them of things they had forgotten, laughter, wonder, and peace. And through it all, the original mango tree still stood, tall, behind Big Omar and Big Baba's old house, now cared for by the whole village. No one dared to cut it. No one dared to forget. At night, the wind still rustled through the leaves, and villagers said that if you sat very still, you could hear Big Baba's deep, calm voice and Big Umar's gentle laughter. Be kind, they whispered. Be patient, and always share your mangoes. The letter beneath the roots one quiet afternoon, after all the children had gone home from school. Amina remained under the Baba tree. The wind was soft, the sun was golden. A calm hush had fallen over the village as Amina sat there, thinking of her childhood. A strange feeling came over her, like the tree was calling her. The branches rustled even though there was no breeze, and a mango dropped gently to the ground, landing softly near her feet. She picked it up. It was warm and glowing, unusually golden even for that tree. Curious, she looked at the spot where it had fallen from and noticed that the earth beneath the tree was uneven, almost like something was hidden there. Amina dug with her hands. Not far below the surface, wrapped carefully in old banana leaves and tied with red thread, was a small box carved with flower patterns. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside, folded neatly, was a letter. The paper was old. The ink faded, but the handwriting was clear, and she knew it instantly. It was Big Umar's. My dearest children, if you are reading this, then the mango tree has decided it is time. Baba and I planted more than seeds. We planted love, kindness, patience, and stories. If the world around you is changing too fast, if you feel lost, remember this: stories carry us home. Take care of each other. Let no one feel forgotten. And no matter how tall your buildings grow, let at least one mango tree always remain. With all my love, Big Amina felt tears run down her cheeks, not of sadness, but of deep, glowing gratitude. She folded the letter back and placed it in her heart. That evening, she gathered all the children beneath the tree and told them what she had found. Their eyes widened. Some gasped, Some smiled, and one little boy whispered, "She knew we'd be here all along." From that day forward, every child in the village wrote their own story and buried it near the umababa tree, a tradition they called seeds. Of memory, they believed the tree would protect their dreams and share them with the wind. Travelers came, storytellers came, poets, singers, even painters, all came to the village that was now famous for its tree that told stories to the stars, and as night fell and fireflies danced around its trunk, the villagers could hear the wind carry whispers from its branches. Be kind, be patient, and always share your mangoes. The child who came back many seasons passed. Mangoes ripened and fell. Children grew into teenagers, then into adults. Some stayed in the village, others left, chasing dreams beyond. The hills and rivers. One of them was Zhao Zubair. As a boy, Zubair had always sat close to Big Baba, listening more than he spoke. He was curious, thoughtful, and always carried a small notebook in his pocket. "So I don't forget the stories," he'd say. When he turned 16, Zubair left the village to study in the city. He promised he'd return soon, but time moves. Faster in the city, work became heavy, days became routine, and slowly, memories of the mango tree began to fade, like the last light of evening sun. The voices of Big Omar and Big Baba became distant whispers in the back of his mind. Years passed. Then one night, during a restless sleep, Zubair had a dream. He saw the mango tree, older, larger, glowing in the moonlight. Beneath it sat Big Uma, her eyes full of light. She looked straight at him and said, "You forgot to plant your seed." He woke up in tears. The next morning, without a word to anyone, Zubair packed a bag and took the long journey back to the village he once called home. Home again. When Zubair arrived, the village felt both familiar and different. The houses were brighter, children played near the river, and in the center of it all, the umababa tree stood even taller than he remembered. Amina, now older, with gentle lines around her eyes, saw him from afar and walked slowly to greet him. She didn't speak, only hugged him tightly. "You heard the tree," she whispered. Zubair nodded, unable to hold back the emotion rising in his chest. He walked to the base of the tree and sat down in the same place he had sat as a child. Out of his pocket, he took the same small notebook, now worn, pages yellowed, corners curled. Inside were dots. The night of golden blossoms. It happened on a night when the sky was moonless, and the stars blinked softly like watchful eyes. The villagers had gone to sleep, and silence lay over the land like a soft blanket. Zubair, now staying in his old childhood home, found himself unable to sleep. The wind outside whispered like a voice too quiet to catch. He stepped out and walked slowly toward the umababa tree, drawn by a feeling he couldn't explain. When he reached it, he stopped. His breath caught. The tree was glowing, not brightly, not like fire, but softly, like starlight resting on every leaf. What caught his attention most were the flowers. The mango tree, which hadn't flowered in years, only fruiting, now bloomed with golden blossoms, delicate and shimmering like silk spun from light. He wasn't alone. From every direction, villagers emerged from their homes. Children rubbed their eyes. Elders held hands. Amina stood barefoot in the grass, her face bathed in golden light. No one spoke. They all stood around the tree in silent awe as the golden petals floated gently down, covering the earth like the first snow of a fairy tale. As each petal touched the ground, it hummed softly, like a bell heard from far away. Then the tree began to whisper, but this time not just to the wind, to everyone. Each villager heard something different. A voice, a memory, a forgotten dream, a word spoken long ago by Big Amma or Big Baba, as if the tree knew what their hearts needed to remember. Zubair heard his name. Zubair, remember the first story you ever wrote? His eyes filled with tears. Amina heard her father's laughter. He had passed when she was young. And a gentle whisper from Big Amma, you became everything I dreamed for you. Even the smallest children, too young to know who Big Amma and Baba were, felt a sudden warmth, like being held in loving arms. The next morning, when the villagers woke, the petals were gone, vanished as if they had never been there. But something had changed. The stories people told became richer, more vivid. Songs had new verses. Children began to dream things that hadn't happened yet. Some said the golden blossoms had awakened the tree's memory. Others said the tree had shared its dream with the village, but all agreed on one thing. It was a blessing. And from that day forward, once every year, on the same moonless night, the village would gather under the tree, tell their stories, light small candles, and wait. Sometimes the golden blossoms returned, sometimes they didn't. But even when they didn't, the people remembered the lesson Big Amma had written long ago. Even if the tree is silent, its roots are listening. The child who heard the tree in the heart of the village, among the children who gathered daily beneath the Baba tree, there was a quiet boy named Taj. Taj was only 7 years old. He rarely spoke. He didn't run as fast or shout as loud as the other children, but he always sat closest to the tree, his hand resting gently on its bark, his eyes filled with deep curiosity. One day, while the children played and told stories, Taj stayed silent, staring up into the leaves. Then suddenly, he turned and whispered to Amina. The tree said, a story is hidden. Amina paused. The tree said. She asked gently. Taj nodded. It said, there's something waiting under the house, something Big Baba left behind. At first, the adults thought it was just imagination, a child caught up in magic and tales. But Taj kept returning, whispering new things the tree told him. Big Amma buried something wrapped in red cloth. There are 4 mango stones. With carvings, the tree remembers a storm. One evening, Amina decided to follow his words. She led Taj and a few trusted villagers to the old, abandoned house that once belonged to Big Amma and Big Baba. Taj pointed to the floor near the corner, under an old cracked stool. Here, he said, the tree says dig gently. The villagers hesitated, but they began to dig, and soon they found it. Wrapped in red cloth, just as Taj had said, was a bundle of old journals, tied with faded twine. Inside were handwritten pages, stories, reflections, drawings, and letters. They were Big Baba's. One page had only a single line, written in careful script. One day, the tree will choose someone to remember what even time forgets. The villagers looked at Taj in silence. From that day forward, they no longer called him Quiet Taj. They called him Tree Listener. A new role begins. The journals revealed stories no one had ever heard. Tales from Baba's youth, love, letters between him and Amma, records of ancient village traditions, forgotten games, herbal recipes, and even a secret lullaby Big Amma used to sing to the tree when it was just a sapling. Taj began to read the stories aloud beneath the tree. Each week and each time he read, something miraculous happened. The tree would bloom just a little. A flower, a fruit, a breeze that smelled like honey. The villagers began to believe. The umababa tree had passed its voice to Taj. And Taj, though still young, understood the weight of it. He cared for the tree every morning. He watered its roots. He whispered secrets to its bark. And sometimes, when he thought no one was listening, he would smile up at its highest branch and say, "Thank you for trusting me." The trees warning one evening as the sky turned the color of burned orange and the birds flew low across the river. Taj sat beneath the umababa tree with his hands pressed against its roots. The air was unusually still. The leaves above began to rustle, but there was no wind. Then came the whisper, soft but heavy, like a drumbeat beneath the earth. "Taj, something is coming." Taj's eyes widened. Protect the roots. Protect the stories. The message was clear. The tree was afraid. A visitor from the outside the next day. A man arrived in the village, Mr. Bakari, a developer from the city. He came with shiny boots, clean papers, and promises of progress. "We want to build a road," he told the elders. "A fast, strong road to connect your village to the city. Hospitals, schools, money, all will come." The villagers listened quietly. But then Mr. Bakari pointed to the far side of the umababa tree and said, "The road will pass here, ... just around this tree. Some roots may need to be cut, but only a few. It's just a tree." Silence fell. Like stone. Taj stepped forward, small, barefoot, determined. "It's not just a tree," he said. "It's our grandmother and grandfather. It holds our stories." Mr. Bakari laughed lightly. "Stories are good, little one. But stories won't bring electricity." Amina rose to speak. She asked the villagers for 3 days to decide, but the tree had already decided. That night, the dream of fire that night, Taj had a dream. He saw the umababa tree surrounded by flames, its golden blossoms turning to ash. The ground cracked. The roots bled light. Big Oma appeared in the smoke, holding out her hands. "Protect what remembers you, or you will forget who you are." Taj woke up crying. He ran to Amina and told her everything. She held his hands tightly. "Then we must remind the village," she said, "why the tree must never fall." The gathering on the 3rd evening, the entire village gathered beneath the tree. Taj stood in front of them, his heart pounding. "I know roads are good," he began. "I know the world is changing. But if we let this tree be harmed, we don't just lose roots, we lose memory." He held up Big Bubba's journals. "This tree remembers your fathers, your grandmothers, your first songs. It blooms when we are kind, it speaks when we listen." Then he pointed to the small clay pots buried around the roots, each holding a story, a wish, a dream from someone in the village. Would you tear up your grandmother's letters to build a road? Would you dig up your own memory? The villagers were silent. Then Amina spoke. "If the world wants roads, let them curve, let them bend, but let this tree stand." They all turned to Mr. Bakari. He looked around at the eyes full of fire and memory and finally sighed. "Then we will bend the road." The tree breathes again that night. The umababa tree bloomed in full, 1,000 golden blossoms falling like stars. The whole village sang, they danced, they cried. Taj sat beneath the tree, and once more it whispered, "You listened. Now we remember together." The roots remember. The rains came late that year, heavy, wild, and full of thunder. The river overflowed, fields soaked, and one night lightning struck the far edge of the village, splitting the sky in two, but not a single branch of the umababa tree was harmed. The next morning, after the storm passed, Taj went to check the roots. As he stepped close, something felt strange. The ground beneath the tree had shifted. A wide crack had formed near its base, as if the earth had opened its mouth to whisper a secret. Taj kneeled beside it. He pressed his hand into the crack and gasped. He felt warmth, not sunlight, not fire. Memory, the opening. He called Amina, and together with a few elders, they cleared away the mud and leaves. Slowly, carefully, they widened the gap until it revealed a staircase, carved in smooth stone, winding down beneath the tree's roots. A hush fell over them. The tree had hidden a passage all these years, and now it had chosen to reveal it. Taj was the first to step down. He held a lantern, heart pounding with every echoing footstep at the bottom. He reached a round chamber, a hollow space within the roots, glowing faintly with golden light. The walls were covered in symbols, stories, and names, carved in the ancient language of the elders, stories that had never been told aloud. In the center of the chamber sat a wooden box, no dust, no rot. Preserved by time and memory, he opened it. Inside were a small piece of Big Uma's shawl, folded neatly, a necklace of carved mango stones, a scroll wrapped in leather, and a clay medallion with a tree etched on one side, and the tree across the river. A week after the discovery of the root chamber, Taj began to have the same dream every night in it. He stood beside the umababa tree, but the tree was looking not at him, but past him, across the wide river. The sky in the dream was grey, the air was heavy, and always a single sentence echoed through the wind. One root reaches farther than you know. On the third morning, Taj told Amina. She listened carefully and then nodded. There is a story, she said, told only in whispers, about a second tree across the great river in a village long forgotten, a sister to our umababa tree. They say it went silent when the world turned cruel, that no one could hear it anymore. Taj looked toward the horizon. What if it's still waiting? The journey begins. The villagers gathered to send Taj off. They packed him food, scrolls of stories, and a pouch of mango seeds from the umababa. Tree Amina handed him Big Baba's medallion. Take this. If the tree remembers, it will know this symbol. Taj crossed the great river by boat, his heart full of wonder and quiet fear. Beyond the river lay old land, overgrown paths, forgotten wells, and the remains of villages swallowed by time. But Taj pressed on, guided by the tug in his chest, the same tug he felt when the umababa tree whispered his name. The forgotten tree on the third evening. As the sun bled orange behind the hills, Taj found it. It stood at the edge of a dry plain, tall, ancient, and silent. Its bark was cracked, its branches bare. No leaves, no birds, no blossoms, yet somehow it still breathed. Taj stepped forward slowly, his hands trembling. He knelt, placed Big Baba's medallion at its base, and whispered, I'm Taj, I am a listener, and I've come to remember you. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a tremble, a soft wind stirred, dust lifted. The tree groaned, not with pain, but as if stretching awake after a long sleep. And then, you returned, came a whisper, older than time. The other tree remembers. So now do I. A broken story. Charge, pressed his ear to the trunk. The tree spoke not in words, but in memories, flashes of light, laughter, fire, and heartbreak. He saw a girl dancing under the branches with golden ribbons in her hair. A storm that tore the village apart. Silence, waiting, waiting, waiting. And then the story was never finished. Taj understood. This tree, the sister tree, held a tale that had never been told. It had gone quiet because the people who once gathered beneath it had vanished, and no one had returned to listen until now. Planting a new root, Taj took a mango seed from his pouch, one from the umababa tree, and planted it gently near the sister tree's roots. "This seed carries memory," he said softly, "and I promise you, your story will be told." As the seed touched the soil, a single leaf sprouted from the old tree, small, green, trembling with light. Taj smiled through tears. It had begun. The unfinished story Taj spent 3 days beneath. The sister tree. Each night, he dreamt not of the future, but of a forgotten past, pieces of a tale unraveling slowly, like threads from an old shawl. When he finally returned to his village, the people welcomed him with open arms. Children ran to him. Amina embraced him like a mother welcomes a son back from war. That night, Taj stood beneath the umababa tree. The golden blossoms were blooming slowly, quietly, as if the tree already knew what he carried in his heart. The villagers gathered, and Taj began. Once there were 2 trees. Once there were 2 sister trees, born from the same breath of the earth. One stood in this village, the umababa tree, where stories were nurtured and roots watered with kindness. The other stood across the great river, where songs were louder, dances wilder, and the stars seemed closer. But the world grew restless. People rushed. They forgot to listen. The second tree was left behind, and slowly it fell silent. The villagers leaned in. Taj continued, but even in silence, it remembered. A girl who danced with golden ribbons. A boy who carved promises into its bark. A lullaby never finished, and the longing to be heard again. He paused, then looked up at the umababa tree, its blossoms swaying gently in the wind. The story waited, not for words, but for a listener. Not for a voice, but for a seed. He held up a small pot inside it, the first leaf from the sister tree, green and trembling with life. Gasps rose from the crowd. Amina stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. "Then let us finish the story. Let us remember the forgotten tree. Let it be part of us again." A new ceremony, the telling of the 2 trees from that day. The village held a new tradition. Once a year, under the twin moons of early summer, they gathered to share the tale of the 2 trees, not as separate beings, but as one family, bound by root, memory, and heart. Taj became not only the listener of umababa, but also the bridge keeper, the one who linked stories across rivers and generations. The children painted pictures of the sister tree. Elders sang the half lullaby Taj had heard in his dreams. And Amina, now older, would say, "One tree teaches us to remember. The other teaches us not to forget again." A final whisper that night, long after the villagers had gone to sleep. Taj sat beneath umababa, alone. The leaves rustled gently. Then, faint but unmistakable, 2 voices spoke as one. "Well done, listener. The story is whole again." Taj closed his eyes and whispered, "Not whole, still growing." The stranger who spoke in leaves, it was during the red wine season, when dust turned the sky the color of old clay, that a traveler arrived at the village. She was cloaked in woven bark, her hair braided with twigs and feathers, and her skin bore tattoos of leaf veins that shimmered under sunlight. She said little at first. The children whispered she had eyes like tree knots, wise, still, and deep. Her name was Nah. She came from far beyond the great river, farther than anyone in the village had ever dared to go, from a forgotten forest, hidden between mountains where no path remained. That night, she sat under the umababa tree, not speaking, just listening. Taj approached her gently and offered her mango tea. She looked up at him and asked one question: "Have your trees ever wept?" Taj blinked. Nyah reached into her satchel and pulled out a piece of bark, charred and brittle. On it was a symbol, a spiral with 3 roots. "There is a third," she whispered, "older than the others. It does not speak, it only mourns." The third tree, she told them of, a tree hidden deep in a valley swallowed by war and wilderness. Once it was the first listener's home, a tree of dreams, so powerful it could carry voices across wind and water. But when greed poisoned the land and people turned against their own, the tree retreated, its roots curling inward, its voice locked away. It was never forgotten, Naya said, just buried. Taj listened carefully. He felt a pull, not of curiosity, but of responsibility. "Then we must go," he said. "If a tree mourns, we must listen." Amina hesitated. It could be dangerous. Taj. But Taj's eyes were steady. So was silence, and we broke that. A new journey begins this time. He would not go alone. 3. Young children, chosen by the umababa tree in dreams, would go with him. Sorry, who could mimic any sound, even birdsong. Leela, who painted what she saw in her dreams. And Kano, who never spoke aloud, but could feel stories in his bones, with Naya as their guide and the blessings of the village. They set off, carrying mango seeds, the medallion, and scrolls of the 2 trees' stories, the valley of Ashefta, days of travel. They reached it, a hollowed valley, silent. Still, at its center, stood the 3rd tree, blackened, massive, leafless. Its bark was split, its trunk was scorched, and yet its roots still pulsed softly beneath the earth. It wasn't dead, just locked. Nyah knelt before it. "It needs more than words," she said. "It needs truth. It needs healing." Taj stepped forward, and together the children began to share. Sori whistled songs from the umababa tree. Leela painted the 2 sister trees across the 3rd tree's trunk. Kano placed his hand on the bark, closed his eyes, and let memory flow from him like water, and Taj whispered, "We remember you." The awakening, the wind rose. The earth shivered, and slowly, like breath returning after a long cry, a single green shoot burst from the top of the 3rd tree, a heartbeat, then another. Then came the tears, clear, sap-like drops falling from the branches like rain, soft, glowing, filled with sorrow and gratitude. The 3rd tree had begun to weep, not from pain, but from release. The silence was broken. The gathering of roots word spread like wind through branches. The umababa tree has bloomed again. The sister tree has awakened. The 3rd tree, the mournful one, has wept and remembered. And now the trees called out, not just to their own villagers, but to each other. It was Sori, the boy with birdsong, who first heard the whisper while sitting under umababa. "It is time to braid the roots. Bring the hearts home." Taj understood. This wasn't just about listening anymore. It was about uniting, preparing for the gathering, the 3 trees, though planted far apart, shared a connection deeper than soil. Their stories had been scattered by time, by silence, by sorrow. Now they longed to be heard together. Taj, Amina, Naya, and the three children spent weeks preparing for what would be called the Gathering of Roots, a sacred festival where each village would bring a story never told, aloud, a gift from their tree, a blossom, a seed, a carving, a promise to the future. The Baba village built a great platform under the tree. The sister tree's people carved a wooden bridge to span the river. The third tree's village, once quiet and broken, began to sing again, their songs soft but strong, like new.